From the ghost cities of a lost civilization to the rise of the world's largest democracy, one culture has weathered 5 millennia of epic empires and spiritual revolution. This is the story of how ancient wisdom and chaotic struggle forged a global superpower. It's a story of incredible continuity and earth-shattering change, of staggering wealth and crushing poverty, of deep peace and shocking violence. To get your head around India is to understand a fifth of all people on Earth and the deep currents that have shaped our world for thousands of years. Our journey begins where it's all started, on the fertile plains of a mighty river more than 5,000 years ago.
Long before the pharaohs built the pyramids, while much of Europe was still chipping away at stone tools, one of the world's first great urban societies was flourishing on the Indian subcontinent. We call it the Indus Valley civilization. Its earliest roots stretch back to around 3,300 BCE, but it was from 2,600 BCE that it truly exploded, becoming the most widespread of the 3 great early civilizations, dwarfing even Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt. Its cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were masterpieces of their time. Imagine a city planned on a perfect grid, where every house was built with standardized baked bricks. Now imagine it had a sanitation system so advanced that homes had private flushing toilets connected to a citywide sewer network. London wouldn't see public sanitation this good for another 4,000 years. Seriously, these people were master artisans and long-distance merchants. Their unique carved seals, decorated with animal designs and a mysterious script we still can't read, have been found all the way in modern-day Iraq. They grew wheat and barley, and they were the very first people in the world to weave cotton into cloth. But for all we know about how they lived, we have almost no idea who they were. We found no grand palaces, no lavish royal tombs, and no giant temples to gods or kings. Their politics are a complete blank. Then, around 1900 BCE, after centuries of stability, it all started to fall apart. The great cities emptied out. So what went wrong? Historians believe it was likely a perfect storm of environmental disasters. The climate may have shifted, making the region cooler and drier, while massive earthquakes might have rerouted the very rivers that gave the civilization life. The old theory of a violent invasion has been mostly set aside due to a lack of evidence. Instead, it seems the people simply drifted away, migrating east to smaller farming villages as their urban world slowly withered. Their grand experiment was over, leaving behind silent ruins and a mystery for the ages. As the Indus Valley cities fell silent, a new chapter began in northern India. Over centuries, waves of Indo-European speaking people, often called Indo-Aryans, migrated into the region. This kicked off the Vedic period, named for the Vedas, a vast collection of sacred hymns and texts written in Sanskrit that would become the bedrock of Hinduism. This wasn't an age of cities, but of nomadic tribes led by warrior chieftains called Rajas. Society began to be organized into 4 distinct social classes, or varnas. At the very top were the Brahmins, the priests who held the sacred knowledge. Then came the Kshatriyas, the warriors and rulers who governed and protected the tribe. Below them were the Vaishyas, the merchants and farmers. And at the bottom were the Shudras, the laborers who served the other 3. This structure, first described as emerging from a cosmic being, was meant to create social order. But over centuries, it would transform into the rigid, hereditary caste system that has profoundly shaped Indian society ever since. In the later Vedic period, kingdoms grew stronger, and the Brahmin priesthood became ever more powerful. Their lives centered on complex, expensive rituals. This growing rigidity left many people feeling spiritually unfulfilled. And in the 6th century BCE, that spiritual hunger gave birth to 2 revolutionary new faiths, Buddhism and Jainism. Siddhartha Gautama was a prince who lived a life of luxury, shielded from all suffering. But after seeing the reality of sickness, old age, and death, he left his palace on a quest to find the root of human misery. Through meditation, he achieved enlightenment and became the Buddha, or the Enlightened One. He taught a middle path, a way to escape the cycle of reincarnation, not through priests and rituals, but through your own ethical actions and mindfulness. Around the same time, another teacher named Mahavira championed the path of Jainism. Mahavira taught radical nonviolence, or ahimsa, a deep respect for every living thing, no matter how small. Both Buddhism and Jainism rejected the absolute authority of the Vedas and the Brahmins, and they welcomed followers from every caste. These new ideas swept across India, setting the stage for the subcontinent's first great empire. For centuries, India was a messy patchwork of kingdoms. That all changed in 321 BCE, when a brilliant and ruthless young man named Chandragupta Maurya clawed his way to power and founded the Mauryan Empire. This was the biggest empire India had ever seen, a unified superpower stretching from the Himalayas deep into the south. It was run by a massive army, a network of spies, and a complex government that managed everything. But the most famous Mauryan emperor was Chandragupta's grandson, Ashoka the Great. Ashoka started his reign as a brutal warlord, but after a horrifyingly bloody war to conquer the kingdom of Kalinga, he was so appalled by the death he'd caused that he had a complete spiritual breakdown and breakthrough. He renounced war and converted to Buddhism. This wasn't just a personal choice, it became his government's policy. He carved his philosophy of Dhamma, righteous, peaceful conduct, on pillars and rocks all over the empire for everyone to see. He built hospitals for both people and animals, planted shade trees along roads, and sent Buddhist missionaries across the world. Ashoka is the reason Buddhism went from a small Indian faith to a global religion. But after he died, the empire crumbled, and India split apart for another 500 years. Unity finally returned in the 4th century CE with the rise of the Gupta Empire. While not as huge as the Mauryan Empire, the Gupta era is known as India's Golden Age. It was a time of peace, prosperity, and a mind-blowing explosion of culture and science. It was during the Gupta age that the mathematician Aryabhata figured out the Earth was round and spun on its own axis, calculated the length of the solar year with incredible accuracy, and developed the decimal system, including the revolutionary concept of zero. These were ideas that would literally change math forever. Art blossomed, producing stunning sculptures and the breathtaking paintings of the Ajanta caves. Great universities like Nalanda became magnets for scholars from all over Asia. The Gupta Golden Age was the period that defined classical Indian culture, creating a legacy that would echo for centuries. Around the year 1000 CE, Turkic and Afghan warriors, inspired by the new faith of Islam, began to sweep in from the northwest. These weren't just raids, they were invasions. By 1206, they had established the Delhi Sultanate, beginning centuries of Muslim rule in northern India. This era was filled with conflict, but it was also a time of incredible cultural fusion. A unique Indo-Islamic civilization was born, blending Persian art and ideas with Indian traditions. This mix created new styles of architecture, music, and even a new language, Urdu, a blend of Persian script and Hindi grammar. But the Sultanate was just the opening act. In 1526, a prince from Central Asia named Babur, a descendant of both Genghis Khan and Timur the Lame, rode into India. At the Battle of Panipat, he crushed the last Sultan of Delhi and established the Mughal Empire. For the next 200 years, the Mughals would create one of the wealthiest and most powerful empires on earth. The greatest of them all was Babur's grandson, Akbar the Great. Akbar knew you couldn't rule a majority Hindu country by force alone, so he did something radical. He practiced genuine religious tolerance. He scrapped the jizya tax on non-Muslims and hosted lively debates at his court between scholars of different faiths. He promoted a policy of universal peace, creating a vibrant Indo-Persian culture that became the hallmark of his reign. The empire hit its artistic peak under Akbar's grandson, Shah Jahan. A passionate builder, he gave us Delhi's magnificent Red Fort. But he's remembered for building a monument to a broken heart. When his favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal, died in childbirth, the devastated emperor commissioned the most beautiful tomb the world had ever seen. The Taj Mahal, built of gleaming white marble and inlaid with precious stones, became the ultimate symbol of both Mughal art and India itself. The empire grew to its largest size under Shah Jahan's son, Aurangzeb. But Aurangzeb was a harsh ruler who reversed Akbar's tolerant policies, destroying Hindu temples and reimposing the hated jizya tax. His endless, expensive wars to conquer southern India drained the treasury. After his death in 1707, the mighty Mughal Empire began its long, slow collapse. And as the Mughal star faded, a new power was sailing in from the west. The first Europeans didn't show up in India looking for a fight. They showed up looking for a deal. Lured by legendary riches, spices, textiles, diamonds, nations like Portugal, France, and Britain set up coastal trading posts. For a long time, it was just business. But as Mughal power crumbled in the 18th century, the British East India Company, a private corporation with its own private army, started getting into politics. With a shrewd mix of bribes, treaties, and brute force, the company played India's rival princes against each other, gobbling up territory piece by piece. The tipping point was the Battle of Plassey in 1757. After a swift victory, the company took control of Bengal, India's richest province. Over the next 100 years, the East India Company went from just one player among many to the undisputed master of the subcontinent. Company rule was one long story of economic exploitation. India, once a global textile manufacturing hub, was systematically deindustrialized. It was forced to become a supplier of raw cotton for Britain's factories and a captive market for British goods. This destroyed local industries and impoverished millions. Brutal tax policies pushed farmers into debt and triggered horrific famines. By 1857, the anger boiled over into the Great Indian Rebellion. It started as a mutiny among Indian soldiers, sepoys, over rumors that new rifle cartridges were greased with pig and cow fat, offensive to both Muslims and Hindus. But it quickly exploded into a massive popular uprising against the greed and racism of company rule. The British crushed the rebellion with sickening violence, but it spooked them badly. The British government dissolved the East India Company and took direct control. The British Raj, or Crown Rule, had begun. The Raj did bring some changes. They built railways, laid telegraph lines, and set up a modern legal system. But these were all designed to serve British interests, to haul resources out of the country, move troops around, and control the population more efficiently. For most Indians, the Raj meant being a second-class citizen in your own country. But the British also made a fatal mistake. By introducing Western education and the English language, they exposed a new generation of Indians to ideas like liberty, democracy, and nationalism. A new consciousness was stirring. The late 19th century saw the birth of India's independence movement. At first, groups like the Indian National Congress just wanted more rights for Indians within the British Empire. But as the British refused to give up any real power, the calls for Swaraj, complete self-rule, grew louder. The entire struggle was transformed in 1915 by the return of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi from South Africa. The world would come to know him as Mahatma, or Great Soul. Gandhi unleashed a revolutionary new weapon, Satyagraha, nonviolent civil disobedience. His core belief was that the moral force of nonviolence could defeat the physical might of the British Empire. Gandhi turned the freedom struggle from an elite debate into a mass movement, mobilizing millions of ordinary Indians. He organized brilliant campaigns that captivated the country and completely confused the British. The non-cooperation movement of the 1920s called for a total boycott of British goods and institutions. The 1930 Salt March was a masterstroke of political theater, a 240-mile walk to the sea to protest Britain's tax on salt, ending with Gandhi illegally making his own salt from seawater. Millions of Indians, led by Gandhi and other giants like Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel, peacefully defied British laws. They faced mass arrests and brutal police violence. but they did not back down. The final blow was the Quit India movement of 1942, when Gandhi demanded the British leave immediately. The British jailed the entire leadership of the movement, but the message was undeniable. Their time in India was over. World War II left the British Empire financially and morally bankrupt. Facing pressure from the US, Britain finally announced that India would be free. But the joy of freedom was poisoned by a looming tragedy. The British divide and rule strategy had dangerously inflamed tensions between Hindus and Muslims. The Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, demanded a separate nation, arguing that Muslims would not be safe in a Hindu-majority India. As independence approached, horrific communal violence exploded. With no other solution in sight, India's leaders reluctantly agreed to a painful division of their homeland. At the stroke of midnight on August 15, 1947, India was finally independent, but it was a freedom born in the middle of a nightmare. The country was partitioned into two nations, Hindu-majority India and the newly created Muslim-majority Pakistan. A British lawyer who barely knew the country drew a line on a map, splitting ancient provinces like Punjab and Bengal right down the middle, cutting through villages, farms, and families. What followed was one of the largest and deadliest migrations in human history. Up to 20 million people were uprooted. Hindus and Sikhs on the Pakistan side of the line scrambled to get to India. Muslims on the Indian side fled to Pakistan. In the chaos, an estimated 1 to 2 million people were slaughtered in riots and massacres. The joy of independence would forever be scarred by the trauma of partition. In the decades after, India faced the staggering challenge of building a modern nation. Under its first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, India became a secular democracy, a bold gamble in a country crippled by poverty, illiteracy, and deep social divides. For decades, progress was slow under a state-controlled economy. The game changed in 1991. Facing a massive economic crisis, India threw out the old playbook and opened its economy to the world. The reforms unleashed decades of explosive growth, pulling hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and turning India into a global economic powerhouse. Today's India is a dizzying, chaotic, and vibrant civilization. It's a hub of technology, a nuclear power, and home to the world's biggest film industry. It is now the most populous nation on Earth and history's largest democracy. It's a place of deep faith and cutting-edge science, where every major world religion lives side by side.
India's story isn't just a list of dates and empires, it's a living, breathing epic of resilience. From the mysteries of the Indus Valley through the golden ages and the dark centuries, to the fight for freedom and the chaotic birth of a modern nation, one thing has remained constant, an incredible ability to absorb, adapt, and endure. India's history is a testament to a civilization that has swallowed up invasions, blended countless cultures, and produced ideas that have changed how humanity thinks. The next chapter of this story is being written right now, and it promises to be just as dramatic as the 5,000 years that came before. If you found this journey through India's history as fascinating as we do, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more epic stories from our world.